Comment, bienvenue, welcome to yet another Property Quorum, my goodness. And I'll tell you what, we have a rare treat today because we are joined not by one, not by two, but by three IPSA coordinating directors and chief execs and goodness knows. Let me introduce you to them. From my right to my left, of course, we have the incomparable Hamish McClay, current chairman. We have the Heather Paul Gleed, who is the chief exec, and we have Michelle. Oh goodness, it begins with P, and I've forgotten your surname. I apologise.
Paula.
Please, 1,000 apologies. But she is a director of the same august institution, and we are joined together by a friend of the show, Zara Olibukas, our team lawyer, who is here to help put some perhaps some very well deserved meat on these bones. Today's topic is front-loading the transaction. Does it really work? Because apparently there's a conversation going on around information, of course, as ever, and the buyer's packs all the way through to upfront searches and earlier title reviews. More parts of the transaction are now being pushed towards the beginning of the process. So does it really matter the fact that you can suddenly speed up the searching if there's still a bottleneck in between? Now, to start us off, as ever, I'm going to have Hamish. Would you please take us away?
Right, well, we don't need much of an introduction now because we know the background and what we're trying to pull together. And it's a great advantage having Zara with us today, because it does mean the three of us are working very, very hard at trying to create the best and most effective way to make an easy life of it for solicitors particularly. And we're trying to do, by working with the councils or wrestlers, many of you know who are watching actually as well, what IPSA are about, but it's really whatever we do, is it going to benefit the process, the full procedure relative to what conveyancing is about? Because is the bottleneck really local authority searches?
Heather, what do you make of that?
Well, interestingly, there's been quite a bit of research done over the last few years. And one thing that stood out for me is that the average time taken for local authority searches has not increased in the last 15 to 20 years. In fact, it's in most areas, it's quicker. The average is still staying at 20 working days, though that doesn't follow through with IPSA members, because we think our average is more like 10 working days. So it seems to us there are one or two very large companies with huge volumes that can't keep the pace, and they're slewing the average times there. But then beyond the searches, we see that transaction times have grown from offer accepted to completion. And there are obviously a lot of steps within that process. And so we're wondering whether having more information up front will actually reduce transaction times, or whether that's not going to matter because the problem is elsewhere.
Michelle, what is your take?
Well, in theory, it should actually speed up the transaction, having information, the searches up front, because then the excuse of, well, we're waiting for the searches is no longer valid. And if a solicitor takes longer to submit the request for the searches in the first place, which is usually the problem, is that delay. It's not the actual search times themselves. It's more they didn't react. They didn't actually order them for 2 weeks after they were instructed. So, there are other things involved in this. And I think really, that's one of the key things that people should be looking at, is when all the searches submitted, and having them up front certainly takes away that huge issue.
I'm very keen to hear what your take on this, Zara.
I work on the basis that I get my clients to check their title plans before I order the searches, in case there's something blatantly obvious. I do sometimes get clients asking me not to send off the searches until they've actually got their mortgage offer. So it's not always the solicitor's fault. We're acting on clients' instructions that they would hold off until they've got a mortgage offer, or sometimes they're still battling on price and they want to negotiate the price down, and if it doesn't come down, they're going to walk away. So it's not always the case that the solicitors settle it. We're doing it on the client's instructions. My experience has been when you know, searches aren't the delay. What they're talking about also is, you know, providing this information up front, you know, before solicitors are involved. It basically kind of means that people get scared because they see some of the information that's given. Let me give you an example. A friend told me a story about an estate agent who had marketed the property and been honest and upfront that it had been affected by subsidence. Now that property didn't sell, so the seller got annoyed and went off and used an estate agent that didn't disclose it on the listings, but it was disclosed via the solicitors, and the transaction went through fine. So you tell me what, you know, having that information up front, is it kind of a deterrent, or you do actually need somebody holding your hand, guiding you through the process, trying to make you understand what the actual risks are? Because to somebody where it says subsidence, they panic and they go, I'm not touching that with a barge pole.
It seems to me that there's still issues within the chain of command, and if there's a roadblock halfway along, it doesn't matter how much faster a certain portion is, it will still get stuck.
Yeah, what we're experiencing also is that estate agents will tend to refer transactions or convince buyers and sellers to go to their recommended solicitors, and normally the people on their panels are what I call factory outfits. So the client doesn't get the personal service, and sometimes people who go into buying leasehold have no idea. I still speak to so many people that have never heard of the building safety crisis. Only this week I've had an estate agent tell me and the buyer in writing that the sellers told them the ground rent is £150 a year and the service charge is £250 a year. And everyone knows that is completely bonkers. And the real truth is that the service charge was £2,500 a year. And the service charges were actually £180 a year. And when I explained this to the buyer, who thought she was getting a bargain, you know, she had not been given any information from anyone as to how leasehold works, what she was entering into, what the risks are. So if you're talking about front loading and upfront, yes, there's all these government guides, but the government are very careful to frame it in a way that it makes it sound good. Same with shared ownership. There's a lot of marketing about making it affordable, but when you dig into the detail and the devil, you'll find that, you know, it's not actually what people think it is. So we need more people being upfront about what the challenges are, and making, you know, poor people that contact me probably get a little lecture from me before they even go anywhere. And they're like, oh, all right then.
I've heard from you so many times before, Zara, that you give them their little lecture and they say, I don't care, I just need to be in the place. So
Yeah.
Make it happen.
Yeah. And that is the attitude of a lot of people until they find out, wow, there's big bill in the pipeline. And I've had a buyer find out there's a £10,000 bill on a flat that she's buying. And so she pulled out of that one because she said, oh, I can't afford an extra £10,000. And she went and found a flat in the next block over that are managed by the same people. And I said, Ted, do you not understand? You're still going to get hit with this £10,000 bill.
Yes, I call it the Pelican Brief. No matter which way you face, you've got an enormous bill in front of you. Michelle, it seems to me that perhaps we're living in one of the most cynical times in human history. Is this just more smoke and mirrors?
Well, I personally don't think so. I think it needs to be there, and it gives people the opportunity to bring their solicitor in sooner without having to put any money on the table. So if that allows their solicitor to go and start investigating without them having to hand over the searches, then I think it's a good thing. And obviously there is the all the other information that's there, and it gives people a head start. They're still obviously engaging the solicitor to look at it to make sure it's done properly, but there's a lot less costs involved at that point. So I think it's a great idea. I mean, I've just sold my mum's house, and we put together the pack, and it allowed a couple of buyers to look at the information and then go ahead and make an offer. But it happened a lot quicker as a result of that information being held in a central repository for them to look at and for their solicitor to look at. So I know personally that it does help.
So Heather, is this once again knowledge is power? Or because I do believe that one of the great things about IPSA members is that they are creating what I call the John Lewis effect. You're creating a best of rather than everything.
Well, I would like to think that. And I think whilst we have the John Lewis effect with our members, there is also a John Lewis versus Aldi effect when it comes to conveyancing solicitors. And obviously Zara is one of the John Lewis solicitors that does do that personal service and will talk her clients through the whole process. But the factory model that we're so against piles them high, sells them cheap. There are referrals involved, referral fees left, right and centre. So estate agents are pointing unsuspecting buyers towards factory conveyancers that will not give them the personal service because the estate agent is getting a referral fee of 400 quid. So we need to, the first thing we need to do, in my opinion, is to ban referral fees, so that only the best people are recommended. And I think if everybody in a chain is using an independent conveyancer like Zara, then that transaction will go faster. And I think the ones where there only needs to be one person in a chain that's using a factory conveyancer, and it delays everybody in the chain. It goes as fast as the slowest person. So I think there's a lot we can do around, yes, the information up front really helps, but there's a lot needs to be done about the bigger factory conveyancers not providing a good service.
And it's quite easy, you know, people just need to go on Google reviews and Google a solicitor that they're thinking about using, and it quite often will say, I don't understand why this estate agent recommended this solicitor for rubbish. You know, it's out there for people to find the information. It's obviously education as well, that route.
I would be careful of reviews, because sometimes what these companies do is they pay for fake reviews to be put up. So do be careful. And I think the best way to find a solicitor is to speak to friends and family who have used somebody and trust somebody. And I get a lot of my work that way from recommendations.
That's what I recommend. Anybody that asks me to recommend a solicitor, I will always recommend one that I know that works really well, or I will say to them, if that solicitor won't take you on because they're too busy, talk to family and friends and ask about their experience.
Yeah, we're just talking about the ones if they've been recommended by the estate agent in that first instance. Yeah, that's how they could do that first check. Of course, we always recommend ones that we've worked with as well. But you know, somebody who's at an estate agent might just, you know, being given a name, the quickest thing to do is have a quick look at reviews.
And I think.
Oh, sorry, you were saying, Zara.
I was just going to say, people are the master of their own destiny, so they need to line their own team up. Pick your broker, pick your solicitor, and pick your estate agent wisely.
As you said to me before, Zara, they need to be putting money on the table if they want to instruct a solicitor. So this is a very serious thing indeed. You're not instructing a solicitor willy-nilly and waiting for the bill at the end. You need to be able to show the insides of your pockets first and cross their palm with silver just to get going. Hamish, referral fees appear to be the bane of the industry, even after that famous program that went out fairly recently showing that they are still rife there. I believe when we spoke to Rowan of the Property Pen, he said it's as if nothing's happened and carried on regardless. Therefore, how do you tell who's really viable?
Well, we've got several challenges there. First of all, how many people watch BBC any longer anyway? It was Panorama, and as we know, some of these Panorama presentations have been fictitious in the past, and they will pick up sort of something. The best way around is to see what keeps coming up, what is repeated, and you won't find it any longer on something like the BBC. It really is. And I think Zara sort of mentioned it so many times, and we're trying to mention it here. The poor buyer out there, they're not buying as often these days. So it's not something they're doing regularly unless they're professional buyers and they're doing it for investment purposes. And they really do need an awful lot of help to actually find the best route forward. And to be quite honest, I mean, who you speak to first can vary, because you do need the professionals out there. I'd be inclined to say, why don't you speak to a solicitor first? Because that solicitor will guide you, or somebody like another one of our great friends, of course, who's Wendy, Wendy Ibsen, who runs the First Time Buyers Club. Somebody like that, they will lead you right the way through. They won't tell you you've got to do this, you've got to do that, but they will help make a decision, because it's something which we're all new to. So the best thing to do is find a professional. And certainly, as we've sort of indicated here, if it's something, Zara mentioned it too, if it's somebody that we know, somebody we've recommended, somebody that we've been on that journey with, it does make a significant difference.
Zara, would you say that building a team around you, a trusted team, is pretty much the most important task a buyer can do before they get going really on the process?
Yeah, definitely. And from a buyer's perspective, they need to remember that the estate agent acts for the seller and not for them. So to, be wary of all the niceties, and also the tactics that are used to push people in a certain direction, especially when you're also it's basically indicated to you that you might need to sign a reservation agreement, which also has traps for the unwary, because you're basically signing up blind to buy a property where you've seen no disclosure at all, in some of these cases, and to pull out of it might cost you a lot of money depending on the version of the agreement used. I had a poor shared ownership client who paid £450 to reserve a property, and the housing association didn't even know this was going on, and she lost her money because the seller refused to rectify a legal defect.
Oh, right. Well, that it does appear there are pitfalls there. We're coming to the end of today's podcast, and it's been very instructional. I'm a little bit shaken. Hamish, would you care to take us home?
Well, what we try and do, of course, in whichever of the podcasts we actually put out there, is bring to mind to listeners particularly of certain things to look out for. I think Zara has made it very, very obvious indeed that you do need to look at things far more carefully than some people are willing to do initially. It is an important decision that people make. I mean, it's an absolute fortune they're spending. And if they're going to be losing the odd 450 here, the odd 1,000 there, and the 2,000 before they actually start getting towards a property which they make, it really puts the whole thing backwards. You read one or two of those in a chain, and it just causes a massive sort of great knock-on effect within what's going on. And so many properties can fall over as a consequence, and money is lost. Whereas if you can get the right information, get it as quickly as you can, there's less chance of things going wrong, providing people are guided correctly with the appropriate information. And this is where we've got snags at the moment. The material information which is being provided needs to be accurate. That needs to be professionally obtained. Not again, in fact, going down the factory route again is not going to help anybody. If you get the right information and you're working with the right team, it makes it so much better for everybody concerned.
Yes, absolutely so. So you heard it here first. It was probably not first because we keep banging on about it. Get the right team, get the right information, and for goodness sake, check and double check that the people involved have your best interest at heart. And as a side note, if Zara says, please take another look at this, take another look at it. Don't just pile in there blindly, for goodness sake. Until next time, please keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars. And in these rather irritatingly troubled times, please look after your mental health. Bye-bye now.
Bye.